Hello everyone, welcome back. You are watching the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage YouTube channel, and today I am in the process of continuing my inspection and cleaning and lubricating of the Singer Touch and Sew 600E model. And this particular procedure that I go through normally is pretty linear. You know, I begin at the top of the machine and then I work my way down. I come over to the side, and then I normally come down to the bobbin area as well as the feed dog area. Now, these areas require cleaning. There's normally, it's almost always, you're going to have some lint build up. If you don't have any, then it was cleaned and probably never used after that. Now this, of course, is, if this looks unique to you, that's because this is the bobbin case of the Singer Touch and Sew, and I'll be doing a different video on that because that just it demands its own video and exploration. But what I wanted to do is just sort of, like I say, take a peek and let's see what. Got some nice light here, and I'll even get a flashlight to peer in further. What am I looking for? I'm looking for any excessive lint. And, oh, well, look at there. You guys see what I see? Uh-oh. Oh, yes. Oh, bandit threads. Let's see if I can grab it. Aha. There is a little thread piece. Now, when you are dealing with this area, the area of your bobbin case and your feed dogs, you can get all sorts of things. Lint, yes, but you can even get thread remnants. And these little thread remnants are really important to remove because all that thread has to do is work its way into where your bobbin case is spinning in your, where your bobbin is spinning in your bobbin case. It can create a world of problems. Now, I'm going to just kind of poke around in here and see what I can see. I don't see very much. There's going to be some, dust down in there. Whoops, a little piece of lint flew out there. It's not all that bad. And we'll be looking in the, I'll be taking a look at the owner's manual to see if it gives further direction in how to clean. So when you look at this, if you look closely, you'll see this bracket here. And this, again, is an iteration, or is related to, the Singer 400 series and the Singer 500 series because they have something similar. And this, of course, is involved in keeping your bobbin case in a proper, appropriate location. Now, I often talk about the necessity to clean the feed dog area before you clean underneath because there can be lint here and that lint will fall down and it can get onto the bottom mechanisms of your machine, which you can clean it off down there, but you definitely don't want to oil down there. So why am I not doing it yet? Well, because remember that beginning with the, trying to remember, the Singer 400 and its feed dog access. Whenever you have a Singer Slant-O-Matic that is not the 301, okay? So imagine your 400 series and your 500 series, you're going to have something that looks just like this. Easier to see if I turn the machine for you. So here, you see a mechanism, and it's actually spelled out: throat plate position, unlock up and down. Now, the reason for this, and if you have a Singer 400 or 500 series, you already know this, that Singer did something interesting. And it was innovative, but that's not the main innovation of the Touch and Sew. In fact, obviously, because the 400 series and the 500 series Singers had this mechanism. And what do I mean by this mechanism? Well, instead of lowering feed dogs, to get them out of the way for free motion sewing or darning, if someone was still doing darning work, you essentially have an adjustment over here that you can make. And this lever flips, it's currently down, right? Well, down doesn't mean the feed dogs, because this device is different than virtually every other vintage sewing machine that had the option to lower the feed dogs. And if you go much further back in sewing machine history, there was no way to lower the feed dogs. You had to cover them with a special accessory plate so that you could darn or free motion work. But many years before this, the Slant-O-Matic series came out, sewing machines had a lever or device of some kind that would allow you to lower the feed dogs. And the 301 is a little different. It has a rod over here on the far left. But most sewing machines have it somewhere in this vicinity of the sewing deck, and then it interacts. There's usually a knob or a lever of some sort, and there's steel below, and of course it has a system, a linkage that moves a sort of a torpedo-shaped rod, and it will either keep the sewing machine feed dogs up, or when you disengage it, it allows them to drop. And of course, I've talked about that device many times, because almost every machine I've ever worked on, that device is stuck. And it's simply stuck because almost no one ever used it. And you can tell. I mean, it just literally, it was working fine when it left the factory, it was oiled, and then it sat for decades and decades. So as part of my overhaul and restoration conservation process, when I rescue a machine, I always overhaul that feature, even if, the chance of a new sewist may never use it. I believe that I should restore that back to its original function, because people are coming to me for machines that are ready to go, ready to work. And that's just my approach, and that's how I roll with that. Now, normally, you clean your feed dog area on most other vintage machines. You simply remove the needle plate and you clean out the feed dogs, and then you, the dust, you get as much as you can. Some of it falls down, and then you go down to, servicing or cleaning and lubricating the bottom mechanisms of the machine. Well, can't quite do it in that order. Why is that? Because this piece is, you can see as I'm pushing, it wants to move part of it, but I'm not convinced that this whole thing is ready to work, because I'm not getting both ends here. And again, I don't think it was used often. So if I go underneath and start adjusting this feature, I'm going to have to loosen it. I'm going to have to lubricate it. And if I do that, that means that when I come back up here to get my lint cleaned off of the feed dogs, I'm probably going to get some dust or lint that's going to fall through and hit the oil. And I'm not sure how else to go about that. This machine, and this really is, this is going to apply to the Singer 400 and 500 series. I really don't have much of a choice, because I can't force this to move, and I can try, but I'm not willing to do that. It's just you all have heard me say this many times. It's a bad idea to force a machine that's been asleep for perhaps decades to just all of a sudden get moving just because I told it to. And I'm not willing to do that. All right, so let's take a look at this device. The device I'm referring to here is the feed dog. It's actually not a feed dog lowering mechanism, because the feed dogs don't lower. What happens is the needle plate lifts up, and it has essentially the same effect. Maybe not quite as smooth, but it's trying to accomplish something with kind of a different approach. But the goal is the same, and the goal, of course, is to keep the feed dogs from moving the fabric around when you're trying to do free motion work. All right, so the mechanism, that lever that you saw me adjusting, I don't know if I can get a picture of this with everything moving here. You can see I don't know. Okay, you guys see my hand over here. I've got a hold of the lever, right? And when I try to get things to start moving, this is free. That's good because that is often stuck. But what am I trying to accomplish here? So there is, you'll notice that this lever, this long lever, it slides behind this plastic nut. And above that, beyond the lever, is the left pin. There are two pins that the needle plate is going to rise up on. You saw one of them, the needle plate trying to rise up, or one of them moving. The other one is right here. Right there, okay? And again, I don't believe they're broken. They're just, asleep. Now we're getting some movement here, but it's very stiff. So, all right. So how do you avoid as much lint mixing with oil to create a nasty mud as possible? Well, the first thing to do is get as much lint as you can off of any area down below here. And we're going to have some, just, it's inevitable because it's going to drop down. There may be some old crumbles of old grease maybe, and the goal here is to create less mess. Okay, so make sure you have there's a little piece of lint there. Make sure you have a good lint brush. Lint brush is your friend. And I'm going to take this one I like because it has both the little broom side and the little bottle. I call it the bottle scrubber side. That's just my own terminology there. And I'm not really seeing a lot of lint over here. It's usually most of your lint underneath your machine, unless it's just a total disaster. That lint is going to be found, on the left third of the machine, because that's where your feed dogs are above this area. What you saw fall there was, I think, some old grease. And I'm gonna looking to see if what I think is lint is actual lint. You may benefit from taking, even in good light like I have here, you might benefit from getting yourself, having a flashlight or having your someone there at home with you hold it for you. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at what I believe is lint. And I believe the lint that I see is on the underside of the race. Remember, the race is what your bobbin case rests on. It looks like a big round ring. Now the question is, can I get in there and try to get some of that out? Because I haven't oiled or lubricated anything underneath here yet, and I would like to get as much dust out of the way as possible, so that if I end up with some lint falling, I won't have, tons of dust falling down and mixing with the oil. And I'm not actually going to oil the whole undercarriage here. Now, this may seem a little odd, and he's like, well, you're not doing things in the order you normally do them. And that's true, because the mechanism that Singer created for the 400, 500, and yes, the 600 series, they just decided that they wanted to raise the needle plate. And, it was innovative, and it works. Some, can't really blame them, but, all right. That's the way they wanted it, I suppose. All right. So where am I going to focus my what am I going to do here? What am I going to try to focus any lubrication that I try to apply now What am I doing? My goal here is to get this mechanism working and not ask it to strain itself, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I see some built up stuff. Again, if you ever have old oil or grease that's built up on an area where it's not really moving against other metal, it's not a mandatory that you remove it all and strip it all down, but you definitely want to make sure that this area is happy. And right now I see some gross filth there. So what can we do? One thing we can do is get out our, yes, you guessed it, cotton swabs, and get my 99% isopropyl alcohol, and I'm going to remove some of this old stuff. Now you may not have much. In fact, sometimes you get a machine and it's really clean. This machine is actually quite clean in up in the mechanicals above in the top portion of the machine, as well as on the left side where the needle bar is, but I really don't know why this looks the way it does. What this orange, may look like rust, but I don't believe that's what it is. If you're not sure, if you take alcohol on a cotton swab and it starts to dissolve pretty easily, it's probably just old oil, because old oil and grease they kind of turn, they yellow and get sort of an amber tint as they age. I'm sure there's a scientific reason for that. They undergo a chemical change. It takes a very long time, but the only reason that I'm removing that, do the aesthetics here matter? Maybe, maybe not. What I'm trying to accomplish is to make sure, and don't forget there's probably some underneath on the bottom here. Yeah, I didn't even have to look. I just, look at that. I just rubbed and you can see it just got right on that cotton swab. What I'm trying to do here is just remove any buildup of old oil, if that's in fact what this is, because I want this before I put the new oil in. If it's this caked on, then that's what I'm going to do. I haven't done that every single time, because sometimes I get machines that, there's some old oil, but it's not really causing any issues, and I put the new oil on it and it's fine. But this was kind of caked up, so I'm going to try my best to clean that area. Now you might think, well, hey, what about what is that? Yuck. You might think, well, hey, what about these other areas? Should I take my cotton swab and clean all of this and this? You don't have to, and the old oil and grease that's on there may actually help, prevent oxidation or any future rust. So that's really up to you. This is not really considered an aesthetic area. And now I just pushed it over to this side, again trying to see what I can do to just make sure that I have removed anything that's going to interfere with this machine's ability to do its thing. All right, the question is, what about over here? Like right there, right? This is spring loaded, of course, and it is also one of the other, this is the right hand post that the needle plate should move. So I'm pushing it, it seems to be moving, that's fine. So I was kind of contemplating, should I, oh, gotta make sure I get this area right here. Should I use a penetrant or just put new sewing oil? And that really depends on how much of a fight I'm getting from the part that I think needs help. If it's really fussy, really just frozen asleep, then I'm probably going to go with some penetrant like I did on the Simpsons machine. However, this is actually moving. It actually looks worse than its motion suggests. All right, so I'm going to take sewing machine oil and I'm going to put some here and over on this other side. And then of course I'm going to put some over here. And don't forget underneath, because remember both of these sides, they both go through this slot, right? So I put it here and then I slid it through, and that helps spread the oil around. So you don't have to flood it, you just got to make sure that both surfaces are covered and that the motion of the device, of this lever itself, is actually helping to spread the oil and get it where it needs to go. And this here, because this is metal against metal, I'm going to put some there. Okay, let's see here. So this is now moving. Now before I finish with this, there's one other area I want to address. And I'm going to lower the camera so that you can actually see it. And get the angle up and you'll see where I'm referring to. There's a bolt, and it looks like a little hinge here. And when I turn this is moving. This lever is held by a bolt and some sort of nut. So I'm just going to put some oil in there. And underneath as well. So now this seems to be moving fine. And it should not be under any undue stress. Now, you might think, well, what about the rest of the underside? Well, this is one of those deals where, you know, you do a little bit here, but I'm not ready to lubricate the whole bottom yet, because remember, I still need to now get access to my needle plate and make sure that I clean the feed dogs of any lint. And once I've done that, you know, I'll check to see if any of that fell down. And then, other than this lever, the rest of the underside has not been oiled. And so if I get lint falling down, hopefully it's not going to stick. All right, it'll be easy for me to sweep away. It's kind of hard to ask a lint brush to sweep something when it's stuck to the oil and making a mess. All right, so we'll bring our camera back up. And let's shift the position of the machine. I'm going to put a little bit of an extra bit of a cushion there because of that bolt. Now, let's go back to the area that we know we need to investigate, inspect. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move my my lovely slant shank zigzag foot, which again, starting in 1950 or so with the 301, they still have these slant shank. I've talked about what the slant shank is. Here's an example of a change. This is a thumb screw that holds the whatever pressure foot you have on your pressure bar. Obviously it secures it. Now this turned, and I was able to turn it, and I took it off. If it had fought me, I would have waited and used some penetrant oil. But one thing I noticed, it's not as heavy as the older ones that were used on prior machines. They've used either, I have to check and see if this is in fact a, I'm assuming that this is made of steel, but it doesn't weigh very much, and I don't know if they changed the quality of the steel or what they did. But it works, and there's nothing wrong with it. You should be fine with it. But this piece, this thumb screw, is going to be extra fragile. If it's stuck on there really hard, don't get in a hurry, because you could snap it. So I can see a quality change there. All right, we'll slide our bobbin plate out of the way, and we have, let's see what this is. This, of course, is a part of this device, and there's I thought I saw something on there. That's not felt. That's just fuzz. That's lint. And again, any of you who sew know that sewing machines, they collect lint. That's what they do. They still do even today. One of my viewers asked a question about one of the white 1960s sewing machines, and it has a red plastic piece in its bobbin. No, not in its bobbin case. It has it on the shuttle, and I need to talk about that on a separate. There's a reason for that. Anyway, all right. So now I'm going to turn the lever right here. I'm going to flip it all the way over to unlock. And when you're looking at the needle plate, you'll see that it's actually coming up. It's bringing it up. And what I need to do, I had to bring it all the way over to unlock, right? So it started to come up when I pushed it to up, but unlock means it sends it all the way up. And again, these are the pins that I was referring to down below. Remember, I was pointing and said those are the pins. They're like little towers. Now this piece here and this piece, they don't move, but underneath, a screwdriver right here, this piece is, of course, there's a spring behind it, right? So let's see if I can give you a little bit of a better view of that. Let me zoom in just a tad. Okay, so if you take a narrow screwdriver and you push down, there are tabs or pins on both sides that push down. So let's see here. Yeah, you're going to see them. You'll see there. The flashlight might help you see. See the little pin that is sort of tucked in there, and of course there's also one on the other side. Not quite as easy to spot, but it's there. Trying to get the flashlight to reflect on it properly so you guys can see it, but there's another one there. So now that plate was very easy to remove once you have the mechanism that's designed to raise it up. You know, something tells me that unlike some of the other mechanisms that were designed to lower feed dogs, because the Slant-O-Matics, again, the 400, the 500, and the 600 series that you see here, because you had to raise the plate in order to get it out of the way to clean your feed dogs, it's possible that this got used, that this particular series of machines, all these Slant-O-Matics, that maybe this device got used a little bit more often because, you know, if you didn't raise the plate, you weren't going to clean those feed dogs. Speaking of which, let's see what we've got going here. It's not too bad, but you never know until you try. I'm just seeing what's here. This is a dry cotton swab. Let's get another one that's a little more pointed. And what I'm trying to do here is trying to remove as much of this lint before I use the brush. If I use the brush, the lint's going to fall down in these openings. And again, I know I don't have, you know, much anything down there oiled except for the device that helps raise the plate. But I'm just poking around, seeing what I can see here. And I don't know if you saw, I just dipped the cotton swab down, and I just pull this out because a dry cotton swab, a wet cotton swab can also do this, but a dry one can too. Just seeing what comes up when again, I've seen much worse when it comes to dirty feed dogs or lint buildup. It can be a lot worse than what I'm seeing here. But you know, truly, I really do not think that this machine was asked to do very much in its lifetime. And it could be because the person who had it just wasn't fond of sewing, or maybe they got it and gave up sewing, or it could be because the Singer Touch and Sew is got some unique features, some of which were great and some of which created some problems. We'll delve more into that as I continue to go through this machine. I've been reading some on the Touch and Sew and why it is somewhat of a controversial machine. So you can see I picked out a lot of this. Typically, I don't have to be so careful with other machines because, yeah, you know, oh, look at that. Look at that big old dust bunny. Wow. I can just let the lint fall down and, oops, well, gonna be taking, oh, by the way, I have not read the manual yet because, you know, and I'll show you guys, we'll talk about the manual. I do have it. It's a huge book, by the way. And I'm going to verify with the manual, but this, remember, look at that. We have front to back needle threading, right? You don't get that with the 301, but you do get that with the 400 and the 500 series and this one. And all modern domestic sewing machines, as far as I know, they thread this way. And I believe it's because people may think it's just easier. So I'm removing, ooh, okay, did it, yeah, it turned. It was kind of slow. And this could be a good needle or not, I don't know. But I don't assume that ever, so I'll just be putting in a new needle. And I think what we're going to want to have is a little drop of oil there because this was, it was a little stiff, but it moved. If your thumb screw that on your needle clamp, if it does not move, and if it is fussy and fights you, do not force it. A little penetrant oil soak could help that. All right, so what's the last thing to do? I'm just going to come in here and any lint that I could not pull out, I think I'm getting really lucky here because I don't see a lot of lint build up. Incidentally, when you have lint build up of any significance, let me get one of my tools out here and I'll point this out to you. Many of you who sew already know this. Feed dogs typically have either one or two. They have these little canals or these little troughs in between where the ridged areas these are your ridged areas, right? And that's what grabs a hold of your fabric and helps move it. And I take a tool like this because sometimes, and you can't always see it. Sometimes you got to take a tool and just explore because sometimes the lint's the same color as the feed dog. It's kind of hard to see. But you want to make sure that there's no lint that's kind of taking up shop in those little grooves because the grooves are that's where your grip is. You know, like it's like the grooves in a tire that give it grip. So again, I'm not really seeing anything of real consequence here. But it doesn't always go that way. And those of you if you've gotten a vintage sewing machine before and you discovered that there was sometimes a whole rabbit warren of dust bunnies underneath these plates. So this is the bottom of the plate. This is, of course, the original. I'm not surprised. This is the Singer plate. This is Singer USA. It doesn't say Simanco. That's interesting. So what I'm going to do, there's a little bit of buildup under here, and I'm just going to take my cotton swab and I'm going to take that off because remember this little surface is going to you want that surface to be clean when your machine is in motion. Again, you may have a machine with a lot worse than that. You can see me this is dry. I haven't even put this in any alcohol. If yours has a buildup of oil, you can take some 99% isopropyl and clean it out. And this is something, by the way, this is not just for restoration. This is part of normal sewing machine maintenance. It just always has been. And just blowing through there. All right, now I see some old oxidized oil here, and if I want to get extra fancy here, nothing wrong with that, because old oil is problematic because it makes things stick. It gets tacky, and you don't want that. So I'm going to take my my 99% alcohol here and my cotton swab and just come in here. And this machine, of course, by the 60s, Singer has, at least for a model like this, unlike the Singer 301, when they introduced the 400 series and the 500 series and the 600, there are no decals, right? They've kind of gotten away from that. That's probably seen as sort of old-fashioned at this point. I do see some oil here, oil residue, I should say. So let me get a flat. I knew that these cosmetic cotton swabs would come in handy. I'm going to just dip this flat side in alcohol, and I'm going to come right in here, if it will allow me, get out of the way, and just see if it will let me come in here and clean off some of that residue. It's right around this post area. Wow, yeah, it took some off. And see what the other end of this cosmetic cotton swab does. See if that does any better. I don't know. And again, this is really not, I'm not so much worried about the aesthetics here because you don't really see this. The reason it matters is because, again, we don't want old oil on areas that move, right? Again, we have metal moving with metal, and that's when it really matters that you just realized that my thread just bring that back so I can get my plate back in. So again, to put the plate back in, this is very similar. If you have a Singer 400 series or 500, it works the same way. So again, Singer, again, was great. If they had something that worked and it still fit the economic proposition to build, they kept it, right? And they, granted, the styling of the 600 is different than the 5, which was different than the 4. So again, to put this plate back, you want to bring it in from the back, and you want to make sure that these semicircle areas are lined up with the post. And now I'm going to come over here and come back. And when I do, you can see the plate settles down, right? It should seat. If, I've pulled it all the way back down and the lever's working fine, but you saw me, I kind of just tapped it in to make sure it was nice and flush. And then we take and we push, I'm going to push my bobbin plate back. Again, the bobbin plate still continues to be made of steel here. And for sliding purposes, again, as I mentioned many times, you always want to be very, very judicious, very conservative with oil in this area. But I'm going to put just one drop here and one on the other side. And that's all, because I want this plate to slide. It was sliding, but, again, it left the factory with a very fine, thin film of oil. And if you're concerned that you've got too much, you can come back and literally just do a little mopping up here. Because the machine, for something like this plate, it doesn't need a lot. It just needs something. It needs a thin film of oil. Huh. I thought that looked odd. Looked like there was some sort of rust, but it was old grease that discolored. All right. Actually, but by the way, if this was oxidation, it wouldn't look like rust because this is aluminum. Even if it was rusting, it would actually, aluminum, when it oxidizes, and it can, we don't often think of it that way, but aluminum will form a white powdery film. Some people who have Singer featherweights have have experienced that. So that is how you clean and access the feed dogs of the Singer Touch and Sew 600E, and this literally should apply to the 401A, the 403, the 404, and the 500, the 503. And I don't think there was a straight stitch 500 series. But if I'm wrong, you guys tell me. Maybe there's one out there and I just haven't seen it. Well, so again, my process of going through to clean and lubricate a vintage sewing machine, it's still the same basic idea. I start at the top, work my way down. Just keep in mind that in order to do this section before you go underneath to lubricate, you've got to get this plate moving, and so that's why you see an exception to my actually putting some lubrication underneath the machine to get this piece moving, to get this up, to get access to the feed dogs, right? Don't normally have to do that with the other machines, but Singer was still a big 800-pound gorilla. Even in the 60s, they were still selling sewing machines. And, they could innovate and do something different and tell people how important that was. I'm going to look at something. There we go. I was looking to see if, by the way, if your posts, if this spring-loaded piece is not moving well, you will know that because when you go to close it, I saw it here, and it was not moving quite right. But I did put a little bit of oil on there from underneath, and there we go. We are on our way. We have a lot to cover with this machine yet. And I'll be going underneath next, and we'll get the underside lubricated, but that again will be familiar to you all because it's like lubricating the underside of a 400 or 500 series, or a Singer 301 for that matter. Thank you all for tuning in here. I appreciate your support, and if you would like to support my efforts to get more of these machines, please consider donating at any of the links you see on my channel, on my videos, for Buy Me a Coffee. I have my own page, and you'll know it's mine. It looks just like my YouTube page. And you can donate at whatever level you would like to help me get more of these machines and keep them out of the landfill. Because even today, people throw really good heirloom quality consumer products. They throw them away. Not just sewing machines. If you're lucky, someone donates it to a thrift store or puts it online to sell. And it's something I think we should do. We should preserve as many of these as possible so that we can prove to people who did not grow up with anything that lasts that it's not a crazy idea. In fact, it was the norm once upon a time. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you next time.